Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and innovator, has just dropped a bombshell. This revelation is exposing a long-held secret that the US government has been desperate to keep under wraps. With his trademark fearless candor, Musk has blown the lid off a mysterious cover-up. With political schemes and stunts going up and about, the public has been left wondering what exactly is going on. So, what has Elon Musk discovered? Join us in this stunning disclosure, as Elon Musk just revealed what the US government is trying to hide that promises to shake the very foundations and spark a national conversation. Tucker Carlson, on Trump's project. Tucker Carlson, a prominent American television host, political commentator, and author, has been a significant figure in the media for over 2 decades. He is best known for hosting the popular Fox News show, Tucker Carlson Tonight, where he presents his conservative views on politics, culture, and current events. Carlson has written for various publications, including the New York Times and Esquire, and has authored several books. When he shared his thoughts on Donald Trump's political project, the public was eager to hear his perspective. The former Fox News host said Donald Trump is a changed man after he survived an assassination attempt during his remarks at the Republican National Convention. Carlson joined several convention speakers attempting to humanize Trump and attribute his survival Saturday to divine intervention. Tucker also thinks Trump's project aims to restore democracy in the United States, despite being paradoxically attacked as an enemy of democracy. Many individuals are puzzled, feeling that this doesn't align with conventional politics, and suspect a more significant transformation is taking place. Tucker experienced a profound shift following the Trump incident in Butler, Pennsylvania. He watched the video repeatedly, struck by the realization that everything changed after that moment. This event marked a significant transformation in Trump's role, impacting Carlson's perspective. He observed that the convention, nation, and world had undergone a significant transformation, and Donald Trump was no exception. The moment that crystallized this change was when Trump stood up, bloodied and resilient, after being shot in the face and raised his hand. This act transcended mere humanity, marking a profound shift in Trump's persona. Tucker asserts that Trump's transformation went beyond political titles. He believes Trump became the true leader of the nation, transcending mere political designations. Tucker explains that a president's title is bestowed through a process that can be subverted, whereas leadership is organic and inherent. He notes that simply holding the title of president does not confer legitimacy. Tucker illustrates this point by jokingly comparing it to calling his dog the CEO of Hewlett-Packard, emphasizing that titles alone hold little meaning. He further emphasizes that leadership cannot be artificially conferred, stating, "A leader is the bravest man. That is true in all human organizations. This is a law of nature." So, he believes Trump's courageous response to the shooting incident, months before the presidential election, solidified his position as the nation's leader, bringing about a profound change in him. Tucker's call with Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson reached out to Trump within hours of the incident that night. And what Trump said to him that night, having just been shot in the face, was remarkable. Trump said not a single word about himself. Instead, he expressed his amazement and pride in the crowd, which didn't run. Tucker thought 2 things. First, it was no surprise they didn't run. Trump's courage inspired them. A leader's courage gives heart to their people. Second, Tucker wondered if this was the selfish guy he'd been hearing about for 9 years. Not a word about himself, only about his people. He also noticed something else, which he didn't think anyone had publicly remarked on, but he would mention it since he didn't have a script. Trump turned down the obvious opportunity to inflame the nation after being shot. Almost every other politician, especially his opponents, would have seized that chance instantly, asking questions like, "How did this happen?" and "We need to get to the bottom of this." Tucker Carlson observed that Donald Trump made a concerted effort to unite the country following the shooting incident. This act contradicted Trump's perceived reputation as a divisive figure. Tucker also noted that Trump's actions demonstrated remarkable leadership and a commitment to the nation's well-being. He believed Trump's primary objective throughout his public life has been to emphasize a leader's duty to their people and country above all else. An authentic leader. Tucker Carlson offered his perspective on democracy, emphasizing that it is founded on the principle that citizens are the rightful owners of their country, not merely subjects or renters. He argued that authentic democracy requires leaders to represent the people's interests and act in accordance with their desires. Tucker emphatically criticized the disconnect between Washington lawmakers and the American people. Citing the opioid epidemic and lack of action from politicians, he passionately expressed his disillusionment with the political establishment, highlighting the staggering number of American lives lost to overdoses in recent years, surpassing the death toll of World War II. He also lamented the absence of meaningful response from Washington, despite knowledge of the drug supply routes. In his view, the Trump presidency aimed to restore democracy by listening to the people's concerns, contrary to accusations of being anti-democratic. Tucker's frustration with the political elite led him to leave Washington after 35 years, disillusioned by their priorities and inaction. Tucker Carlson criticized the current commander-in-chief for failing to prioritize military protection for the nation and its citizens. He found this lack of concern insulting and a clear indication that the administration does not care about Americans. In contrast, Tucker effusively praised Donald Trump, describing him as a wonderful person who genuinely cares about the American people. He emphasized that Trump understands his duty as a leader is to protect and serve his citizens, just like a father protects his family or an officer protects his men. Tucker also reflected on recent events, including the debate and the incident in Butler, wondering if something more profound was unfolding. He shared a personal experience where Antifa protesters targeted his home in 2018 and his wife was intimidated. The next day, Donald Trump personally called his wife, offering support and promising to stand guard outside their house. Trump's words, "There's a lot of hate out there, but there's also a lot of love," left a lasting impression on Tucker. This encounter showcased Trump's empathy and commitment to protecting Americans, reinforcing Tucker's belief that Trump truly cares about the people he serves. Trump's near-death experience and Elon Musk view. Donald Trump shared a harrowing account of the recent attempt on his life during a rally in Butler Township, Pennsylvania. He started by expressing gratitude for the outpouring of support and recounted the events of that day. Trump described the scene as a warm and beautiful evening with music playing and a cheering crowd. He began speaking about his administration's accomplishments on immigration when he heard a loud whizzing sound and felt a strong impact on his right ear. Realizing he was under attack, Trump immediately dropped to the ground as bullets continued flying. Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, putting themselves in harm's way. Trump noted the unusual calmness of the crowd despite the chaos. A Secret Service sniper ultimately neutralized the threat with a single bullet. Trump acknowledged the gravity of the situation, stating he was lucky to be alive. This incident occurred during Trump's campaign rally, highlighting the risks and challenges faced by public figures. Elon Musk shared his personal experience with facing life-threatening danger, revealing that he had encountered 2 individuals with mental health issues who traveled to Austin with the intention of harming him. Musk described the first individual as believing he had implanted a Neuralink chip in his head, despite the illogical nature of this claim. He humorously suggested offering a software update to address the supposed issue. The second individual struggled with schizophrenia, and his condition worsened after stopping medication, leading to a detachment from reality. Musk observed that the likelihood of receiving threats increases proportionally with one's public recognition, stating that even without controversial actions, a well-known figure like himself becomes a target for harmful individuals, exploiting the current crises. This event led to Nigel Farage, who is a British politician and former leader of the UK Independence Party, to express his concern. Farage was a key figure in the campaign for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, famously known as Brexit, and has been a prominent voice in British politics and security for over 2 decades. He has also been a vocal critic of the European Union and has called for the UK to adopt a more independent and sovereign approach to governance. In addition to his political career, Farage has been a radio host and has appeared on various television programs, including the BBC's Question Time and Have I Got News for You. He has also written several books, including Fighting Bull and The Purple Revolution. Farage has been known for his charismatic and outspoken style, as well as his ability to connect with voters who feel disillusioned with mainstream politics. So, he has never been shy to talk about his perspectives. Nigel Farage, who is also a friend of Donald Trump, expressed concern that the Labour Party might exploit the current crisis to erode liberties and free speech, necessitating a strong response. He warned of a growing storm in UK cities, where division is fracturing communities. Farage highlighted two key issues: violent disorder and demographic changes. He noted that certain inner-city areas have become predominantly Muslim, leading to unease among British citizens who feel their country is undergoing fundamental changes. He criticized successive governments for failing to control immigration, resulting in record numbers and a border crisis. Farage emphasized that beneath the surface of extremist violence lies a broader concern about loss of national identity. He drew parallels with the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, accusing Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer of hypocrisy for supporting those protests, while now seeking to control the narrative amidst working-class British protests. Farage stressed that he does not condone violence but advocates for responsible social media use, balancing free speech with preventing hate and incitement to violence. Farage's call for awareness. Nigel Farage went on to emphasize the importance of arming children with truth and critical thinking skills to combat extremism and misinformation. He advocated for responsible social media use, allowing speculation and fact-sharing to promote awareness. He also criticized Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's crackdown on social media, warning of unprecedented threats to free speech. He praised Elon Musk for challenging Starmer's stance and for bringing these issues to public attention via social media. Farage expressed concern about proposed school programs teaching children to identify extremism and misinformation, fearing indoctrination and narrative control. He believed honesty from authorities would have mitigated recent chaos, citing his own experience with online speculation and accusations of inciting riots. Farage faced backlash for seeking truth, with campaigners calling for his arrest. He highlighted sinister censorship on social media platforms like Facebook, suspending accounts for sharing factual information. Farage condemned excessive government control, citing lockdowns as an example. He warned against exploiting recent riots to suppress inconvenient debates, emphasizing the importance of democracy. He remained resolute, denouncing street violence and thuggery in all forms amidst the chaos. He described the recent events as appalling, highlighting the severity of the situation. Farage distinguished the current violence from previous riots, emphasizing the dangerous and wrongful nature of targeting migrant hotels with people inside. While acknowledging widespread frustration and anger, he firmly rejected street violence and thuggery. Farage reaffirmed his commitment to democratic principles, emphasizing his 30-year history of promoting peaceful resolution of issues through elections. He stressed that democracy provides a constructive outlet for addressing problems, eschewing violent means. Nigel Farage observed that the UK and other European countries are grappling with a surge in illegal immigration, mirroring the situation in the US. He noted that this issue has sparked widespread anger and frustration, particularly among working-class communities. Farage highlighted the significant financial burden on taxpayers in affected cities, emphasizing that Europe's working poor are the primary victims of mass illegal immigration. He also referenced the controversy surrounding Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who faced backlash for extending services to immigrants. He pointed out that Walz's actions, similar to those of Kamala Harris, have generated significant pushback. Farage highlighted the often overlooked needs of native-born populations, particularly lower-income individuals, who bear the brunt of massive illegal immigration. He emphasized that immigration and the economy are currently top voting issues. A darker protest. Meanwhile, a significant protest gathered outside the Reform UK headquarters, with hundreds demonstrating under the Stand Up to Racism banner, specifically targeting Nigel Farage. Protesters associated Reform UK and Farage with recent riots and violent disorder. In response, a Reform UK spokesperson stated that their Victoria Street office has been a postal address only due to security concerns and previous invasions by extremist left-wing campaigners. They chose not to disclose their actual headquarters location, citing thuggery and aggression from the far left. The protest drew a diverse crowd, with Reform UK accusing the demonstrators of being a far-left group prone to intimidation and violence. Thousands of left-wing activists gathered outside Nigel Farage's office, blaming him for riots he had sought to prevent, highlighting a sharp irony. The protesters, including members of the Turkish Marxist and Leninist Communist Party and the Marxist and Leninist Party of Germany, accused Farage and Reform UK of inspiring violent disorder and rioting. Demonstrators chanted, "Nazi scum off our streets," associating Reform UK with fascism and the far right. Some protesters believed Farage should be held accountable for inciting violence, a claim he would likely strongly reject. The protest featured various flags and symbols, including anti-fascist and England flags, as well as a swastika being discarded, further emphasizing the association with fascism. The focus of the protest, organized by socialist workers, was squarely on Nigel Farage and Reform UK, rather than addressing the broader issues affecting England. Similar demonstrations occurred in other UK cities, including Newcastle, Glasgow, Birmingham, and Manchester, indicating a coordinated effort to target Farage and Reform UK. The protests sparked concerns about free speech, democratic opposition, and the labeling of political opponents as far-right or fascist. Farage questioned the labeling of far-right protests as mere thuggery, suggesting it might be a distraction from underlying power struggles. He viewed terms like racist and far-right as convenient insults, oversimplifying complex issues. Farage believed the recent protests were exploited by troublemakers seeking confrontation with authorities. Farage expressed concern that the militant left was unfairly grouping all opposition together, ignoring nuanced perspectives. He identified a fundamental divide between globalists, who advocate for open borders, and those concerned about the impact of large-scale immigration on the UK's 60-something million population. Farage was astonished by the seeming indifference of globalists to the significant changes and challenges affecting British streets, including rising violence and social issues. He implied that this disregard was symptomatic of a broader ideological clash. Farage expressed concern about the ongoing protests, stating that many people, including himself, are worried about the situation but do not resort to violent actions like throwing objects at police officers. Farage suggested that those on the left, often residing in affluent areas with private insurance, are detached from the issues affecting ordinary people. He echoed a correspondent's sentiment that the working class has lost its political voice. Donald Trump's political prospects. After the talks on racism and security, attention turned to Donald Trump's political prospects, with Farage noting that Trump is now the favorite to win, a historic first in his nearly decade-long political career. Trump's supporters eagerly anticipate completing the task of making America great again. However, critics argue that Trump's approach alienates moderates, exacerbating divisiveness and division in the country. Farage's comments highlighted the stark contrast between the concerns of ordinary citizens and the political elites, as well as the polarizing impact of Trump's presidency. Donald Trump's presidency has been marked by divisive and cruel rhetoric, sparking widespread criticism. Despite this, Trump attempted to project unity during a recent appearance in Washington, D.C., seeking validation from establishment Republican figures. His efforts aimed to sway Nikki Haley voters who might otherwise support Joe Biden or abstain from voting. The current political climate on Capitol Hill is deeply divided, with experts acknowledging the stark polarization. Trump, however, claimed that the group standing alongside him shared his concern for the country's direction and emphasized their unity. Supporters praised Trump's energy, excitement, and enthusiasm, citing a groundswell of support within the party nationwide. Trump addressed the gathering, highlighting the collective common sense, intelligence, and patriotism in the room. He reaffirmed his commitment to making America great again. Critics argued that Trump's reliance on lawfare tactics has only intensified divisions, rather than bridging them. Donald Trump appears to be gaining momentum in his bid for re-election, with analysts and betting markets indicating a strong likelihood of victory. The Economist gives Trump a 66% chance of winning, while the Decision Desk puts his odds at 56%. Trump is performing well in key states, including Nevada, Minnesota, and Maine, where he has taken a surprise lead. If current trends continue, Trump could lead the GOP to a sweep of the White House and both houses of Congress. Business leaders, who previously distanced themselves from Trump, are now preparing for his potential second term and seeking to support him. Trump's fundraising efforts are yielding impressive results, with donors eager to back him. He is strategically campaigning in liberal strongholds like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and the Bronx, with plans to visit Detroit, a city Joe Biden won by 94% in 2020. Internationally, Europeans and others anticipate Trump's return, causing concern among those who prefer a weaker American president. The pro-coalition is accelerating efforts to secure funding before Trump potentially changes course. Overall, Trump's prospects for re-election appear robust, with momentum building across various fronts. Elites are experiencing growing anxiety and dread, particularly among foreign policy elites, following the unexpected EU election results. They struggle to comprehend why voters are rejecting globalism and embracing nationalist sentiments like "Making America Great Again," which is gaining traction among minorities and young people. Democrats are resorting to familiar criticisms, labeling Trump a dictator and attempting to portray him as scary. However, their efforts are seen as unconvincing and ineffective. Concerns about violence are escalating, with some warning that Trump's rhetoric may incite violence in the upcoming election. Critics argue that Trump is promoting violence due to his dwindling support. Conversely, Trump's supporters argue that violence is indeed a critical issue, citing actions by hardcore activists and the consequences of Democratic policies. They assert that Trump has been vindicated on various issues, including the economy, courts, border security, and trade with China. Historical parallels are drawn with Andrew Jackson's presidential campaigns in the 1820s and 1830s, dubbed the Age of Jackson by historian Arthur Schlesinger. Trump's presidency is seen as a similar phenomenon, marked by populist appeal, tangible results, and an entertaining style. Dominant Donald. Donald Trump is dominating policy debates in a manner reminiscent of Ronald Reagan, leaving a lasting impact on the political landscape. His influence may be remembered for generations, potentially shaping the future for 50 years or more. Trump's selection of J.D. Vance as his running mate and Judge Cannon's decision to dismiss the classified documents case have delighted his supporters. Vance's flamboyant style and unapologetic approach align with Trump's unifying message, resonating with working-class Americans who feel abandoned by political elites. Critics, however, express concern that Vance's bombastic nature will perpetuate division and hatred rather than promoting unity. They view Trump's choice as a dark moment for the Republican Party, fearing a harmful long-term direction. Detractors like Van Jones denounce Vance as a toxic presence and divider, sparking laughter from Trump's supporters, who see this as further evidence of the left's vitriolic personal attacks lacking substantive arguments. Donald Trump's selection of J.D. Vance as his running mate has sent shockwaves through the establishment, with many viewing Vance as a formidable threat. Like Trump, Vance remains unfazed by baseless attacks, and his compelling life story resonates deeply with Americans. Vance's memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, and his journey from a challenging childhood to Yale Law School and the United States Senate embody the American spirit of perseverance and determination. His dedication to forgotten men and women aligns with Trump's platform, posing a significant challenge to the D.C. establishment, particularly those lobbying for China. Meanwhile, President Trump dismissed concerns about missing out on young voters by not being on TikTok, citing his lead among this demographic. He attributed this to his competence in office, contrasting it with President Biden's struggles with public speaking and navigation. Trump recalled his efforts to ban TikTok due to national security concerns, but Congress opposed the permanent ban. He expressed skepticism about TikTok's impact on the election, confident in his connection with young voters. Trump faces significant challenges in his campaign, and he's focused on addressing the country's serious issues rather than showcasing his sense of humor. He believes the nation is in decline, citing problems like illegal immigration and national security threats. He emphasized the gravity of the situation, referencing tragic cases like the Heinz family's loss of their daughter to an illegal immigrant. He's determined to tackle these issues seriously, without appearing to make light of them. Regarding internal opposition in his first term, Trump acknowledged relying on recommendations from Washington insiders, some of whom didn't share his agenda. He's now more familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of various individuals and plans to make informed choices for his cabinet in a potential second term. He also highlighted his unique background as a businessman and outsider in Washington, which initially led him to rely on others' recommendations. However, he's now well-versed in identifying competent and dedicated individuals to support his vision. Donald Trump was asked if he could work with Mitch McConnell, given their past disagreements and differing views. Trump acknowledged that many Republican senators, including Steve Daines and John Cornyn, have endorsed him, potentially paving the way for cooperation. However, Trump expressed skepticism about working with McConnell, citing his handling of finances and ease in compromising with Democrats. Trump specifically mentioned McConnell's willingness to allocate trillions of dollars, making it easy for Democrats to advance their agenda. Trump highlighted his own resourcefulness in building the border wall, using military funds when Congress wouldn't cooperate. He implied that McConnell's effectiveness might be limited if Trump wins re-election, suggesting McConnell might eventually step aside. Trump's response indicated a willingness to collaborate with Republican senators, but remained uncertain about working with McConnell due to their past disagreements and differing approaches. But people haven't stopped digging at them. How a second Trump term could pose very real risks. While Trump's campaign appears to be in a good place, the former director of the Committee to Protect Journalists lays out the grave threats that American news outlets might confront and offers proactive safeguards. In February 2017, just a month into his presidency, Donald Trump asked to meet alone with FBI Director James Comey in the Oval Office. The president urged Comey to abandon the investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's unauthorized contact with Russia. He also floated another idea. Why not jail journalists who leak classified information? They spend a couple days in jail, make a new friend, and they are ready to talk, Trump supposedly said, according to Comey's notes on the conversation. Comey laughed, but Trump wasn't joking. During Trump's first term, the Justice Department pursued several secret leak investigations into leading news organizations, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN. In his campaign for a second term, Trump has twice discussed scenarios for jailing journalists in the course of leak investigations and implied that the threat of a prison rape could get them to cough up their sources. The reporter goes to jail, Trump said at a November 2022 rally in Ohio. When the reporter learns that he's going to be married in 2 days to a certain prisoner that's extremely strong, tough, and mean, he will say, "You know, I think I'm going to give you the information." This kind of extrajudicial intimidation is indicative of the twisted thinking of mob bosses or hardcore autocrats. But this was a proposal by a former American president, and there is good reason to take him at his word. In Trump's first term, he tried repeatedly to roll back press freedom. Fortunately, his worst instincts were thwarted by senior officials, the courts, and the media itself. As the former executive director of the Committee to Protect Journalists, which publicly challenged Trump's attacks on the free press and proclaimed that the media was not, in fact, as he would occasionally refer to the profession, the enemy of the people, I like to think I played a small role. While Trump's opponent, Kamala Harris, has been closing the gap in the presidential race, even overtaking her rival in some polls, the election is still weeks away, ample time for twists and turns that could swing the tide in Trump's favor. And if elected once more, he will try, yet again, to go after the press. In order to understand what Trump might be capable of, it's worth reviewing what he attempted to do in the first term and why he failed. It's also worth considering the stakes. During his first term, Trump frequently applied regulatory pressure against media outlets he perceived as being ardent critics. He reportedly pushed the Justice Department to file its 2017 suit to block a proposed merger of AT&T with Time Warner, which at the time owned CNN, Trump's chief cable news nemesis. The Trump Justice Department denied that. The president had intervened in the case, which was dismissed in 2018 by a district court judge who called it unfounded. Trump suggested that the Federal Communications Commission should consider pulling NBC's license, something it lacked the legal authority to do, and he reportedly urged then Postmaster General Megan Brennan to raise postal rates as a way of punishing Amazon, whose founder, Jeff Bezos, also happened to own the Washington Post, which consistently investigated and found fault with his administration's policies. According to the Post, Brennan resisted, presenting the White House with a slide deck demonstrating why this made no economic sense. Trump's 2016 campaign promise to make it easier to sue journalists for libel never went anywhere. though Trump and his allies filed or threatened to file claims against critical media outlets before, during, and after his presidency. While in office, Trump's efforts to ban pesky reporters from the White House also failed. After his administration pulled the hard pass for CNN's Jim Acosta in November 2018, a federal judge ordered the White House to restore it. Trump also sought to undermine Voice of America, a media outlet not widely known in the US, but one of critical importance to people around the world who live under repressive regimes. In his brief tenure as director of the agency that oversees US government-funded media, Michael Pack, a documentary filmmaker and friend of Steve Bannon, tried to dismantle the editorial firewall regulations that allow VOA to operate with independence. The day that President Joe Biden took office, Pack resigned before he could do permanent damage. Marty Barron, who led the Washington Post's coverage of Trump during his first term and defended the newsroom against Trump's threats, believes that these approaches will be on the table the second time around, and he's concerned that Trump may try some new tactics, including putting pressure on advertisers. In Barron's view, it's not inconceivable that journalists could end up in prison for failing to reveal their sources. Trump, Barron tells me, has talked about jailing journalists, and he's talked about that actually since the beginning. The reasons for concern are obvious. The one area in which Trump has had clear success during his first term and on the campaign trail has been in undermining public confidence in the media and deepening polarization. Trump has threatened, cajoled, belittled, demeaned, and diminished individual journalists, particularly women journalists, from New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman to former Fox anchor Megyn Kelly. He even went after Graydon Carter, the former editor of this magazine. These efforts, along with attacks on specific news organizations and the media as a whole, have softened up public opinion in a way that could enable a renewed assault on press freedom. So when it comes to curbing the power of the free press, the authoritarian playbook is firmly established. Trump knows it well. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.